Agenda is the approval of the agenda. Patrick, any changes?
No additions or subtractions from staff, Mr. Chair.
All right, do I have a motion to approve it?
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, item 3 is approval of payment of bills. You sign off, Steve?
Yes, move to approve payment of the bills.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Now, item number 4 is approval of minutes of September 6th, 2023. Anybody have any changes?
Mr. Chair, I saw no changes. I move to approve the minutes of the September 6, 2023 meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, item 5 is the consent agenda items. Looks like we have about 14 of them. Board have any requests?
Mr. Chair, I would like to pull item 5E, preliminary tax levy.
Item, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
And it looks like we're going to pull 5I, 2022-5 Gilfil and area street improvement. Is that correct, Larry?
Yes. Please.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, let's pull 5A2 and wrap that into our general discussion under new business 8A.
So 5 what?
5A.
A.
And you're going to move that to 8?
Yeah, let's have that with the general discussion regarding fees and et cetera here at the township.
All right. That it?
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
I will move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Got a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so we're going to go right to consent agenda item 5E. This is the 2024 preliminary tax levy.
This is the preliminary tax levy, which has to be certified with Ramsey County. It's not the final tax levy. This is after the township submitted the proposed budget back in March. Staff has had several months to refine the numbers. I think it's kind of a big dang deal, myself personally, because we are coming in, and let me just preface it by saying, we're all residents, we all pay taxes to the township, but this is a less than 6% tax levy compared to last year, yet there is all of the main expenses that the township has to incur each year are being fully funded, such as infrastructure, lots of road projects, lots of equipment that breaks down and has to be replenished. We are depreciating the assets as we should be. It's setting aside funds for a rainy day so that when the roof leaks, you have the funds to replace it. And we are taking into account some rather hefty charges from some of those vendors that we contract with, such as Ramsey County Sheriff and White Bear Lake Fire Department. Some of these entities have passed along substantial increases to us, and we've been able to incorporate those into our budget for this next year because of, I'm just going to say this, because I think of prudent financial decisions over the past few years. There has been money set aside to make sure that we have those funds available to address issues as they arise. And the vast majority of what the township spends money on is quality of life stuff. Infrastructure, pavement, stormwater, sewers, water mains, snow plows, lawn equipment, parks, recreation. I mean, it's keeping the township operating well, and I think that coming in right now, and again, this is not the final one, we still have opportunities to whittle that down.
And staff will do so.
We're coming in at under 6% projected increase, especially when it's compared to the surrounding communities. I think this is just outstanding, and I wanted to call attention to it.
Steve, anything
Well
else?
said. That's all I'll say.
I get impassioned about it.
Well, and plus too, I just want to give a kudos to our staff because they've been really working hard to get this number down. So to me, it's a big deal, especially, what was it last year? I was afraid to say how much was going up last year. And now this is something we can actually be proud of.
So,
Any other discussion?
Thank you.
All right, then I need a motion.
that said, based on Finance Officer review and recommendation, I move to adopt the resolution adopting the preliminary amount to be raised by property taxes for the year 2024.
I'll second that.
Motion made second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All right, then we'll move on to consent agenda item 5I. This is Gilfillan Area Street Improvement. Larry, you going to take this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Town Board. The Gilfillan project has been under construction this summer. The project is mostly complete. There's some storm sewer work going on, but it's really mostly wrapped up. The pricing, you see the funding table in the packet, is coming in right at where we were projecting. We're really close to that. What I wanted to discuss with you tonight is the agenda item is to declare the cost to be assessed, order the preparation of the proposed assessment roll, and establish the date of the assessment hearing. We've had feedback from the residents in this neighborhood that perhaps a segment of the project should be paying more because of the type of improvement that was done for them. And so I wanted to talk about the resolution before you shows an assessment amount, declaring this amount to be assessed of $874,000, to leave your options open for a higher rate for those that got some different type of improvements. You could set that at $899 and then leave yourself open to adjust that at the hearing, after hearing testimony at the public hearing for the assessments. As a part of what we're going to be mailing out, and it's included in your packet, is a kind of a fact sheet about assessments to try to educate and explain how our assessments are calculated and what the process is for that. So you may have seen that in the packet, but that's going to go out to residents when we send the notice out for the hearing. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that you kind of have two options tonight on the declaration. You could declare the amount of $899, which kind of leaves yourself open to a larger assessment for some properties that saw different improvements, or you could keep it at the $874, which is that $4,000 for everyone, which was communicated throughout the process. And I can answer any questions you might have. Steve?
I guess I'd like to hear more about the leaving the options open at the $899 assessment, and raising the bar for those that benefited higher. We're still staying with under what we thought would be the improvement value, correct, at that number? Because we can only assess for up to whatever we feel the value of the improvement is to their property.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so I guess I don't see any downside to that.
So my questions are along those lines, because I know we announced earlier this year, hey, we're doing this project. We actually announced it last year. We're going to do this project. This is what we think we need to do. So we think this is what the assessments will be. You got in there, and as usually happens, you start pulling stuff up and look and say, oh, gosh, this is more involved. We need to do more work. Because we're doing more work for a certain stretch, we have the option of saying that residences fronting that specific stretch could maybe be assessed more than residents on another section that were getting the work done that we originally thought? Is that correct?
Correct. Of course, with these types of projects, and the difference isn't that much between the two. Reclamation includes removing all the pavement, whereas mill and overlay, it removes a portion of the pavement. But a lot of the auxiliary work on streets includes, curb removal and replacement. If it gets into a driveway, you have maybe some driveway work as well. On this stretch of Greenhaven, there's not as many driveways. So one could argue that on that side of things, their costs for the project might be less on the driveway side, but more on the roadway side. So there's many variables that I talk about in the handout that we're gonna send to individuals, that there's just so many variables that, you know, again, our recommendation was just to keep it at the 4,000. But for the purposes of the hearing, you may want to just consider that larger number for now, and then take the public testimony at the hearing next month and make your decision then.
So is this similar to what we just had, the conversation that I just had? We had our preliminary budget in March. Now, we had our initial budget in March. Now we're certifying the budget to the county, but we're not going to have the final tax levy until later. Is that kind of the same process?
It is kind of the same. It's setting the amount, declaring the amount, and so you can't go above that later. So,
And that's based on the fact that potentially those residences fronting this particular section that had the additional work done could potentially have a greater benefit?
yes, that could be argued that way.
All right. Interesting.
Anything else? But, I mean, I know when we go through these every year, for the last 10 or 12 years I can remember, the reason we set an even or a same amount for everybody in a certain area is because of just what you said. There's so many variables. To try to piece it out, we would have to all of a sudden now try to assess every individual a different number. And it just doesn't work. In fact, it gets so expensive, it costs more just to even do that. Especially in the township where we have pockets of the township where there's county roads right next to cabins, right next to brand-new developments. So it's very difficult to take these assessments and try to piecemeal them.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this was to, if you go unit to unit, it just basically is fair to everyone. So we're not discriminating against anybody that thinks they're getting a raw deal and somebody else who thinks they're paying too much or too little. So I feel pretty comfortable the way we've always done this. I don't know, the reason for the higher amount, where's that number coming from? What's that
It's an
include?
extra $1,000 per unit on Greenhaven.
So that's where that 899 or whatever that number comes from?
And it also should be noted that in this case, you know, Greenhaven's used by everyone as well.
Right. How did, I don't remember now, how did we come out on the bidding? I know we've been getting usually pretty favorable bidding.
From the preliminary, it was really close to what we had for on the preliminary study.
So we're pretty close
We
to being,
added some storm sewer work, which pushed it up higher as an overall project cost, but that storm sewer work is funded by the stormwater fund.
okay.
So the projected costs that were laid out at 1.7 some million is where it's, I think it's going to come in.
That's where we believe it's going to come in, real close to that.
Another engineer's estimate.
Well, it's not like the
We have
past,
more information now, but
it's not like the past few years where we had some extremely favorable bidding. I guess that's not the
Yes.
case anymore.
it wasn't bad. It was right on
Okay.
Now you're making it defensive.
Yeah, I can tell.
accurate estimating.
Accurate estimating,
Yes, it was.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. It could be all the business coming so high that we would have to think about not doing the project or postponing it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't save us any money because then the next year it's just going to get more expensive again.
Yes.
Add in interest rates too.
But so tonight, we're just looking to adopt the resolution so we can have the assessment hearing for October 16th, correct? So this
And
is,
declaring that amount,
right.
because that amount will be in the notice to the residents.
All right, now I know we have some folks here. Anybody wish to speak to this item? Nope? Thank you. All right, are there any other questions of the board? Or what's the board's pleasure?
I will move to adopt the resolution providing for a hearing on assessments for improvement 2022-5 and call a hearing for Monday, October 16th, 2023 at 7 PM and authorize the town engineer to prepare the final assessment roll at $899,000.
Second on it?
I'll second that.
All right, motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 6 is old business, we have none. 7 is public hearing, we have none. So that moves us into New business, general fee discussion.
Yes.
Patrick, you want to roll this?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Board, what you have in front of you is a proposed edible cannabinoid product license application draft. It has already received approval from our legal counsel. What we wanted to do tonight, while introducing this, and by the way, we do have 2 or 3 businesses that are anxiously awaiting this to be approved, this form to be approved. We were a little hesitant about committing to a fee with this until we had a larger discussion with the board about where we are with the rest of our fee structures within the township. So what you've got in front of you is a draft of the application that has received legal approval. What I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to settle on a fee specific to this application, but I also want some input from the board in a general sense about what your sense is of where we are to market, I guess you can call it, for our fee structures in the township, and if we need to do a larger study on this and start readjusting or rethinking where we are as a township in our fees. So what you have in addition to this proposed application is I did have staff put together a comparison of where we would fall with license fees to this specifically compared to cities around us. And as you can see, we are kind of, I don't want to say an outlier, but the mean, we are further away from the mean average of what the annual fee on this particular license is. And I guess I'm just wondering what your comfort level is specifically to this one first, and then we can start talking about ordinance 54 and our fee structure. As you can see, right next door at White Bear Lake, we're at $125. Hugo, right next door, is $100, same as us. But then the rest of these cities around us are a little higher. So I'm just, I'm not exactly sure what the board's comfort level is with this one.
Steve, what do you got?
Well, we're in uncharted territories when it comes to this, and I'm kind of surprised it's that low. To be honest, I know what the tobacco was, but I thought there would be a little higher value because of the exposure that we're having. So, how high, I don't know. Do you know when White Bear Lake, this is a recent adjustment?
We just called them last week.
And are most of these that you've got here on this list, are they mostly current? Current?
Yep.
I'd like to see it higher, personally.
Do we have any direct expenses with these type of establishments? Do we ever go out and spot check them?
No, we have a group in Ramsey County that performs that function for us.
Okay, so the fee is strictly to handle administrative processing and paperwork or whatever
Primarily,
else.
yes.
With a brand new, let's say tomorrow somebody wants to set up a new liquor store. We have background checks and so on. And we don't currently, we do have background checks. Fees for liquor stores.
We do.
But not for tobacco.
No, but this is special, and I think that needs to be in the discussion.
Well, so how much is the liquor store background?
I think it's in here, isn't it?
Hold on.
I don't know if it's in there, is it?
So.
Hold on, I'll get it.
Liquor licensing, but I don't know. Fees, $500.
$500, I just got there, darn you.
Sorry.
That's okay. There you go.
How is that, that's just to cover our cost of doing the research and due diligence. I would suspect we should have at least the same for cannabinoids, cannabis,
For the background portion.
for the background checks, yes.
Does that mean then continuing on, that license would stay the same, or you want to be able to?
Well,
The
that's-
initial would be 5 or drop it after that.
Right, yeah, ongoing, assuming there's no change in ownership, I don't know personally why we would want to charge that 500 again.
No.
True.
I mean, once you get to know your customer, I guess, then you don't need to do that every year, I wouldn't think.
But the $100 is like, well, we do it for gas stations.
Yep.
And all the businesses, $100.
Correct.
Yes.
Patrick, all these numbers are all current as of today?
Like I said, we just called around last week.
No, but I mean, on
Oh, for us?
this whole list?
Yes.
I guess I thought vacant building registration was more. We got 1,100? I
And-
thought that was more. I got a question for Chad. Did you look over that application form?
I did,
Anything out of the ordinary? Is it strict enough?
strict enough. I mean, it's the way I would design it.
Is this modeled on what you've seen from other jurisdictions
As
also?
well as taking hours, too.
Yeah.
Ours is pretty strict.
I mean, these forms are pretty uniform.
Yeah.
The important point is that you conduct a criminal history background search. That's important. That's in there.
Now, I thought we discussed this before about who is licensed to sell it or where. It had to be a commercial business, correct?
We were not allowing it in homes.
Right. there's no
Yes, it's not a
sales.
home business, it had to
And
be in
that
a
was in the
commercial.
language of.
Yeah.
We just approved for the home. home
Just
use
approved that.
occupancy.
Right.
So is it tied to a actual commercial business then, before you can apply for this?
Yeah.
Yes. It has to be,
Yep.
the license has to be attached to a business located in the commercial area.
Well, what I'm getting at is, can they come in and want a business license for cannabinoid or whatever, and that's their business license? But now they don't have a little
Oh, I see what you're saying.
brick and mortar place to sell from. What I'm trying to get to is, I don't want to see a mobile trailer moving around.
Okay, business information,
Solid point.
business address, there's a street address. You have to have a street address.
Okay.
For your application, yeah, and it's supposed to be a brick and mortar location.
All right. All right, so is the board comfortable with keeping with that 500 for the initial? And then, I don't know, Steve, is 100, do you want to move that number?
I think it should be higher, but I've thought that for a year already, that 100 was too low. How much higher? It's for discussion.
I don't think we're trying to discriminate against
No.
this kind of a deal, but I also think this is new, and there's going to be unintended consequences when we start this. And stuff's going to come up that we didn't anticipate. and it's
That
gonna-
is absolutely
It's
correct.
going to cost the township more.
Yeah.
So,
And remember, whatever you do set the fee at, you can change it. We just need a good point to start with here, because I don't want to say with the beating down the door to get going on this, but we do have a couple businesses that would like to get going on this.
all right, Steve, you,
Do you happen to know what low potency means? What's listed as type of permit, low potency?
There's a certain percentage of THC that you cannot exceed.
That, so cigarettes, I mean, it's listed like with tobacco and cigarette sales, so same category? You're asking me if I've got a number in mind?
If I may.
Yes.
You have to keep the license fees are not meant to be an income producer. They're meant to cover your costs.
Right.
And as Pat pointed out, the question is, what are the costs? And we don't know yet.
No.
So I would suggest that you go high. We can all, if it turns out, if after we get some experience with the licensees, we find out that it was not as expensive, it was not as intensive use as we thought it was going to be in terms of staff time and other resources, we can always drop it.
With that in mind, I like 250.
Sounds good to me.
50 plus the initial 500 for the background
Yes.
check.
I think we need to have that
Gotta have
background
that.
check. Yep.
Okay.
And you would want to do that at 250Y.
Why? Because I think of the increased fees and expense that we may incur in an area that's uncharted. We don't have a clue as to what we're really getting into yet. And we know at the tobacco level, we're probably fine, but this is it's really an add-on to what we already have.
So the concern basically is the amount of third-person costs, third-party
Yes.
costs you're going to incur, plus staff time.
Yes.
Correct. And I'm sure Pat would be dragged into everything, but would this be something that Mike would be involved with, administration, like?
No.
Compliance
Haley?
checks are done through,
There's a nonprofit group that does it for everybody.
Right, but I mean, you're going to be dragged into whatever question comes up,
Yep.
it's going to rocket right to you.
And that same thing happens with cigarettes and alcohol sales too.
Okay, well, again, your time is valuable, so.
I like to think it is.
well, even speaking of compliance checks, are we charged for those?
No.
But they're gonna have to increase more because of this thing popping up, so
Yeah.
eventually it's gonna trickle down to us.
I think that is a cost that has not been taken into consideration.
There's a lot of stuff they didn't take
Yeah,
into consideration.
This is going to be amorphous, I guess is the word, across the state. We're all going to have to learn by our mistakes and what we've forgotten here on the front end. But, I mean, that's how they've done it in other states too.
All right, anyone here wish to speak to this subject? Ready to start a pot store?
I have a question.
Well, you gotta come up to the podium. Just come up and give your name and address.
Valerie O'Brien, 4688 Stoddart Lane. So it sounds like White Bear Lake charges $125, but we're going to be double that? I don't care either way, honestly, but I think it's a way to exclude businesses.
Well, the thing is, that's the way they are now. They haven't included their cannabis charge yet either.
Oh,
Right now, it's just tobacco for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we don't know what they're gonna do.
who knows?
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
And again, the license fee has to be coordinated with the actual costs incurred. So you're not it's not a profit center, but nonetheless, it's not a loss center either. And that's hard to, at this point in time, no one knows what these costs are going to be associated with these type of licenses, businesses, I should say.
All right, any other questions of the board? We gotta go back to item 5A first.
Yes.
I need a motion if everybody's comfortable with that application.
So I will, based on staff review and recommendation, I will move approval of the license application form to sell edible cannabinoid products.
Second,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? And then we'll go back to item 8A, which is general fee discussion. Do we need a formal motion on that, Patrick?
No.
So just our consensus right now is $500 initial background check and $250 a year license renewal.
Correct. And for 8A, just for the board to consider in terms of process and how we'd like to approach this, and you might have a different and better idea, but we are working with Evan and Larry and Jim on redoing our ordinances. This might be a good one to wrap into that whole discussion. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So perhaps, I mean, a lot of these are having to do with building and construction and that kind of stuff that we can just roll into that discussion, and we can pull out some of these more specific license fees, like for tobacco and alcohol, and kind of adjust those on the side, if the board's okay with that.
Well, this is also going to fall back into, we're going to end up with some sort of water police. When this lawsuit's finally washed out through the lake level, we're going to have to put on more staff to monitor watering, sprinkling, those sorts of things. So that might blend into some of these other fees or permits that they have to follow up on. Now, I know it should eventually be just coming out of the water fund, correct?
Yes.
But if this all of a sudden takes a new life that Mike's going to need help with other compliances, then that's going to increase our cost too, so.
It's another thing that we're just gonna have to work through. Don't know how it's gonna look right now.
All right, is that it?
That's it, yeah.
That will work well, because, the park board is working on a park use policy, which includes fees.
Oh, great.
That's all kind of, I assume the fees would fit into this section whenever we get to that point.
Okay.
So,
And I'm not saying that all of these have to be adjusted. I just think it's a good time to start looking at this.
I think the park board's park use policy is supposed to have kind of the final drafts in October to be presented to the board after that. So the timing wise
Great.
might, no, that's given that we can all agree on what they come up with.
Okay.
But that's the plan.
Okay.
So,
Oh, and plus, some of these fees were established some time ago. And obviously, all our costs have gone up, so they all need to be looked at.
Yeah, they really should. This is good timing.
Now, is that something that goes back to all the commissions then, or?
Well, we tried that approach, if you'll recall.
Or does the staff have a better idea if this is covering
I
our
think
costs?
staff is going to present recommendations, and that's what we're working through with Larry and Evan, for a vast majority of these fees.
I can speak a little bit for the planning commission. They were asked to look at fees, but they felt uncomfortable with that because they felt Mike had a better handle on it from a staff position.
All right, any other questions of the board?
Thank you, board.
All right, moving on. Item 9 is added agenda items, we have none. Item 10 is open time. I see we have some residents. Do we have a concern with you folks? Otherwise, back to the podium.
So even though I've given you my name and address, everybody else here would prefer not to have their name mentioned, and you'll find out why,
Unfortunately, you have to.
even though they're just sitting here.
If they don't sit, if they sit here, fine. But if they come and talk, you have to. Okay?
Quiet, everyone. All right, so we're here to talk about a neighbor of ours who I think a lot of the board has probably heard about, but we live on Stoddart Lane, right near the corner of Allendale, and we have a neighbor whose business has become selling mini donuts at fairs. So he parks a commercial vehicle, and it has a Y license plate, so it's truly a commercial vehicle, on the street all year. He'll move it before, when the snowplow is coming, but then after the snowplow, he still parks it there even in the winter. And not only is it an eyesore, but it's dangerous, and I'll talk about the safety issue in a second, because after he got his first mini donut truck, he realized he could make a lot of money, so he went and bought a second mini donut trailer. But the trailer, it's also has the same kind of, screaming loud logos on it, but it's only used to transport equipment for commercial use. It's not a trailer that you would use for personal use, it's a cargo trailer that's completely enclosed. And in fact, that trailer, he's parked on the street in the summer, and it's damaged the road, and I have photos of that. Actually, I'm going to hand these out if you don't mind. So this will have many more details that I won't go through all of them right now. But then you can circulate these. These are the photos of what I'm talking about.
I didn't need to take yours.
So this has been an issue for 3 years, and we've called the township many times, and Mike Johnson has been a great support, and the township has sent official letters to this person saying, you're violating, the ordinance 17, because you are not allowed to park a commercial vehicle on the road for more than 90 minutes, unless you need more time to load and unload. Well, this is a permanent parking place, meaning he brings the truck to go to a fair and then comes back and the truck sits there again. And now the trailer also sits there, and usually the trailer remains attached to his Hummer. So it takes up an awful lot of space, and he just bought a third commercial vehicle, an ice cream truck. So we live in a really beautiful neighborhood. I'm happy to pay we pay high cost for the houses and, pretty high taxes for living there. And now I feel like we have a commercial parking lot right in the middle of the neighborhood, and it's really ugly. So the sheriff has been called many times because it is violating an ordinance, not because it's an eyesore. But the sheriff, I don't know if they've ever ticketed him or not, but recently I called the sheriff. That's what Mike recommended we do. And the sheriff, deputy sheriff I spoke with, said that they are no longer going to ticket anybody or intervene on this kind of parking violation. They will still ticket for winter violations, but not for this. And the sheriff also said his understanding about the definition of trailer as it is in Ordinance 17, he said they have always interpreted that as a recreational trailer. So he and we discussed it very friendly, but it's clear to me that in Ordinance 17, that trailer does not mean recreational trailer, it means any trailer. And the reason I think that is because the ordinance says trucks, trailers, and recreational vehicles. And if trailer was specifically a recreational trailer, I think it would have been attached to recreational vehicles, or at least follow it. It wouldn't precede it. So I reinterpret that as any trailer, any vehicle that's towed by a motorized truck. So he's parking that there now. So the sheriff will no longer intervene. The township has tried to intervene. Nothing has happened. I don't even know if he moves the truck after the sheriff has spoken with him, but a couple neighbors have approached him to talk about it, and they're friendly with him. And so one person said, I want to talk about moving this because it creates a problem there are a lot of kids that play right there and ride their bikes down his driveway and out into the street. And the property owner said he owns the police. It's not a problem. So I don't know what that meant, but I know the person who previously lived in that house, who sold this to him as a friend, was a drug dealer. This person is a felon. He was.
We got to stop here. You got to be careful about casting on any kind of accusations you can't back up, so.
Well, this person is a felon, period. I read the case online, and he was in prison for selling drugs and money laundering. So that can make you a little nervous when the person yells at you yells at you. So what happens when the neighbors approached him, who are friends of his? First, he started yelling about another neighbor's pickup truck that's in his driveway. So he gets really angry right away. And then the last time I called the sheriff, this property owner assumed it was the same neighbor calling the sheriff again. So every time the neighbor walks by now, he yells at him and swears at him. And comes over to his house and takes pictures of his pickup truck. It feels very threatening. It might not sound threatening. It's really threatening when a neighbor does that to you over and over again. And then a second neighbor approached him to talk about it because of safety issues. And he yelled at him so much that the neighbor would not come tonight. And this is a large, strong male. And he would not come because he's afraid to come. And that was true with maybe 5 or 6 neighbors that I invited to come tonight. Because for example, when the sheriff came the other day for the last time, he thought, this property owner thought it was a particular neighbor and who lives very close. So that night, sometime after 10 p.m., the property owner went out, started his Maserati, and revved it really loud for a while, just to be disruptive. Then he got out of the Maserati and moved to his ice cream truck, turned on the ice cream truck, and started blaring music. So he is a little bit reactionary, and it makes people nervous. And nobody has successfully intervened, the township or the sheriff, to get him to stop parking these vehicles there and doing things like blasting his radio. The safety issue is that when you come down Stoddart Lane, he lives just 2 houses before the 90-degree turn onto Allendale. Does everybody know that turn? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So when he has 3 vehicles parked there, or even 1 truck parked there, when you come down Stoddart, you have to pull out around them, and I have a picture in there from my car. You end up in the middle of the street because you're going around a large commercial vehicle parked on the side of the road, and people come down Allendale pretty fast because it's right at the bottom of a hill, and then when they make that turn, it's a blind turn for them, and it's a blind turn from anybody on Stoddart. So they come around that corner, and it's usually a wide turn. So if you're going around the truck, this has happened to me numerous times, you end up face to face with the car coming around the corner. So sooner or later, there's going to be a terrible accident there. Thank God it hasn't happened yet. So that's a real safety issue. Also, there are about a handful of kids that are between 3 years old and 10 years old. And they're all friends, and they all, including the property owner's kids, they all ride their bikes or they have little motorized vehicles down his driveway, which is a hill, and then out into the street, and then they have to go out and around these vehicles, so they end up in the middle of the street, which is terrifying as a driver, that someday you're going to be driving down the road and you would not be able to see one of these kids dashing out from the driveway around the truck that's parked at the end of the driveway. So, let's see if I missed anything.
Before you go any farther, how did you leave it with Mike Johnson, the building inspector?
He said to come here.
Oh, he said he was going to come here tonight?
He told us to come here.
Oh.
He said the next step would be for the township attorney to get involved, because the township has done letters. He's thumbed his nose at them. The sheriff, he didn't listen to the sheriff, and the sheriff now says they're not going to intervene in these. And so it seems like the next step is to have the township attorney get involved and then prosecute him for violating ordinances.
Patrick, you got anything to add to this?
No. I'm aware of this. I've spoken to this resident a couple of occasions. And I know that Mike has done his best to, within his power, to mitigate this. And if we can't lean on law enforcement, I don't know what recourse we have.
Does this business fall under the home occupation ordinance or not? Because he's obviously working out of his house with a commercial business. I'm looking for
would
some
say no.
avenues here to,
No, because there's no permanent structure here that he's operating out of. I mean, by that I mean, he's not like he's making mini donuts, in a structure on his property.
that may be true, but he has to have an office in that home to run this business, correct?
And to be perfectly frank, that would fit right in the definition of a home,
Well, that's where I'm going with this. So if it's technically a home occupation, that ordinance reads that it can't be disruptive to the neighborhood. And if he doesn't even have a home occupation permit, he's out of compliance there too.
We could look at that, sure.
Could he say that he runs all his books out of the trucks?
You can say anything.
Well, actually, no, to expand on what the chair said, the point is his, it's not so much where he's keeping his records as how the overall business is affecting the neighborhood, which is the whole purpose for the home business ordinance, is the adverse effect on the neighborhood. So that's something worth looking at.
Well, I'm
Don't
just,
make any promises, but it's worth looking at.
obviously, if we're gonna have, this guy's just gonna throw his thumb at us anyway, so we're gonna need some, besides ordinance number 17, we're gonna need a little more beef to pursue, and I think this might be an avenue we could try.
Great.
I know, I was just down there the other day, for the fair, I was driving that to see where all the no parking signs are put. So I have to go down through there. And I run that once in a while because when the business is let out on Centerville Road, it gets a little ugly on Centerville Road by the lights.
Yes.
And I can see where your traffic is gonna get a little accelerated when people tend to start using that as shortcuts.
They cut through there, but
Yep.
they do use Allen.
This
yeah.
is when the shift change comes through, very
Correct.
huge line. We get that a lot
So
now.
I get that safety factor is a big thing, so. But I don't know, I think we can have staff look at that to see if this is an avenue we can take for this gentleman, because he obviously is just gonna be defiant.
Well, can you, if it's parking that close to the corner, isn't there a no parking here to the corner? Reports it back?
But it's a curve, not a corner.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, yeah.
I think these are the vehicles
Yeah.
right here.
We're looking at a map, by the way.
Yeah.
So when Mike left, Mike's out of the office until I think Wednesday or Thursday this week. When he left me with that our neighbors might be showing up here this evening, and that we probably should, because of the roadblocks we're running into with law enforcement and the residents' response to Mike's initial contacts, that me, Mike, and Chad should probably be looking into a few more avenues to hopefully get this gentleman to cooperate, at least initially, and if he doesn't want to cooperate, well, then we'll have to try another avenue. But to be honest with you, think we've exhausted the time that we need to use to get this person to cooperate.
It has been 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, also too, now, depending on what gross vehicle weight these things are registered at, I don't know if he needs a MnDOT sticker for them. It all depends on the size of the vehicle.
One of them is definitely commercial because he has a Y license plate from the state. So that one I know is considered technically a commercial. I don't think that the trailer is considered a commercial vehicle. It's not big enough, but it is exclusively used for commercial purposes.
And a lot of times vehicles are rated to only pull certain trailers. So where I'm looking to go with that is if he's not abiding by that either, which means a CDL means you gotta have one to run those bigger trucks. And that might be another avenue to make sure he's even compliant. So all we can do is just find, trust me, we've had some residents in the township, and I hate to say it, but it took a long time for one of them to be resolved. I think we have maybe some better options on this one that we can have staff look into.
To clarify, the concern is that these vehicles are in the road parked where they are.
Correct.
If they were parked in his driveway, would that be a concern?
It'd be less of a safety concern, but his driveway is usually full of cars anyway. So now it would be full of cars and trucks. And I don't know if that's allowed under township ordinances, but it seems to me it's a residential neighborhood. So if commercial vehicles are not permitted to be parked in the driveway, I mean, even with open trailers, you have to park them behind your house or on the side of your house. So to park these hideously large and colorful mini donut trucks in your neighborhood doesn't make sense to me. So I'd prefer that he not park them there.
Yeah,
But that's not the safety issue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you might have said this and I forgot. Are they there year-round? or-
Yes,
So they don't disappear during the
they do
winter?
not
Okay,
disappear.
well, that's a
He
problem.
moves them to plow snow.
He does move them when the plow's coming. Yeah. But then moves it right back.
Yeah.
There's also, right next
We
to
know.
his house, right before you turn left on Allendale, there's a group home there, and they frequently have Metro Mobility coming out, which makes it, hard for them. And school buses now, when he parks there, school buses cannot make the turn if there's somebody in Allendale. So people have to back up down Allendale, or if they see the bus coming, which is hard because it's a blind corner, they have to wait to let the school bus make the turn. Because the school bus is already out in the middle of the road going around the vehicle, and it doesn't have the space that it needs to then make a left turn.
All right, Steve, you got anything else?
No.
All right, I think what we'll do is we'll have staff brainstorm a couple of those ideas, and if nothing else, I'll have Patrick, are you the best contact for the neighborhood then?
And we do, or Mike has spoken to you.
Yeah,
Yes.
And then when Mike gets back into town, let's see if we can come up with something for you.
thank you.
But let's be clear, this could take a long time.
The wheels of government don't move all that quick. Everybody has rights, and I'm sorry.
I get it, yeah. But at least we're taking another step, right, not just another.
I understand. And if the White Bear Township, we don't have people running around looking for violations. We're complaint driven. So if we don't hear about complaints, people just push the envelope and do whatever they think they can do.
Right.
But when you have citizens that finally bring it to us, then we react on it. So we'll see what we can come up with. All
Thank you for bringing it.
You're welcome.
right, thanks.
I have another issue if I'm the only one here.
Oh.
It has nothing to do with these guys, but.
You can go now.
What was my other one? One is, when you mentioned water and city parks, I think the township should think about changing park grasses to fine fescue, because you don't really have to water it, it doesn't need fertilizer, you only have to mow it twice a year. It's really easy, it's environmentally, sound, and it would be cheaper in the long run if the township used fine fescue in any public area that has grass.
Park board guy, you familiar with that?
Nope.
Oh,
And we are taking some pretty major steps, especially like Polo Lake Parks, where we just had township days.
Yeah.
We're looking at a feasibility study to actually take pond water and use that for irrigation.
that'd be great.
And that's going to help relieve some of our water issues, so.
Yeah.
Trust us, water's on our mind all the time.
All the time.
And a lot of these soccer fields, they're going to want to play on grass, so we don't have an option.
That's probably true. Okay, my third one is, at the end of our driveway, a neighbor, multiple neighbors ago, next to us, repaved his driveway, and when he did it, he made it too high at the bottom. So in front of our driveway never drains. So we always have, if it rains or snows and melts, and then we have an ice pond. But everybody in the neighborhood calls it Anderson Lake, who was the first owner. There is a huge lake or ice in front of our driveway. And I've noticed that the tar in front of our driveway is all broken up. I'm guessing that's from the ice freezing and melting. But if they're going to consider, well, I should tell you, resurfacing the roads, or if there's anything they could do so that it drains, as it's supposed to into the, sewage drain, it would be great.
Is that something you can look at, Larry?
Yeah, we can,
All right, appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you all.
You can have your photographs if you want them. I don't think we need all of these.
Can you use them?
Well, I think
We've got one just for the record,
Yeah,
yeah.
so-
We'll use the ones you got printed out. Those are fine.
Okay.
Yep, those are fine.
All right, anyone else wish to speak for open time?
Sure.
Hearing none? All right, I'm going to ask for a receipt of agenda materials and supplements.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And I'm asking for an adjournment for 7:51.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
thanks, folks.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you.
You guys are here for education purposes. I hope you got educated.
You need something?
You need